Okay. Apparently, having a technologically challenging day. So I do apologize for that. I'm Linda Brubaker, and welcome to Lunch and Learn. This is a job seekers group where we're here to support one another, provide information, support ideas, answer your questions wherever we can, and make sure that we're helping you all to find your next forever jobs. I don't believe in forever jobs anymore. I believe that you should always be looking, always be searching, always keep your eyes open, because companies no longer have that sense of loyalty to us. And forgive me, but you guys are the ones that matter. So I want to make sure that you're not only finding that next forever job, but that you're also hiring your next boss, your next company. It's important for you to find the right location, the right people for you, as well as them trying to find you. It's always a two-way street when we're talking about hiring. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is we're going to be talking about a variety of different issues, starting with the whole idea of making a career pivot. A little bit about me first. I am a job search coach. I've been an HR recruiter, an HR business partner, a headhunter, executive search consultant. I've been a hiring manager, and I've been a dedicated job search coach for the last 7 years. My business is to help people with their job search. But I do this out of love to make sure that everybody gets some of that support that they can. And as I said, we're all here to support one another. I will put my information in the chat later so that if anybody wants to reach out for one-on-one assistance, they are welcome to do that. But I also want to make sure that you're connecting with me so that we can support one another just as you're connecting with each other. Okay, that said, what I want to do is I want to start with a quick go around the room. Okay, just see if I can see everybody who's here, just to acknowledge that you're here. And then we're going to do some quick wins. So I see Al and Alan and Allie and Annette and Carol. Yeah, go ahead and wave, people. Catherine, Chad, Diana, James. Oh, I'm losing my screen. Okay, people keep coming in, which is wonderful. I see Dave and David. I see Daniel, Desiree, Catherine, Karen, John, Joey, Joan, Catherine, another Catherine, okay. I see Nick and Mimi and Michelle and Lynn and Michelle, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, and Nick and Scott, Sherry, Steve, Vanaduga, excuse me. I wanted to do that just as a way of recognizing that everybody is here. Everybody is here for a reason. It's also my way of remembering who you are and your names when we're going through this, because when I put in the information, by the way, for our private group, you have to either be somebody who's attending these meetings or somebody who's registered and said you can't attend. We want to make sure that what we do in that private LinkedIn group really remains private. It's a free space. It is a space where you can say whatever you want to say about your job search, ask for assistance, ask questions, and we are all there to support you. And what's nice is that nobody on LinkedIn, other than the people in that group, can actually see our information. So it's an area where you can really be yourselves and ask the questions you want to ask that you don't necessarily want anybody else on LinkedIn to see. So I'm going to put that in the chat as well. Let's start with some quick wins. Who's got a quick win that they want to share?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I was approached by a project manager that I used to work with about a 1 month engagement. So it's nothing is solidified yet, but I was excited to have a nibble potential.
Absolutely. So how did they find you?
I used to work with them.
Okay.
So,
And so they knew that you were looking again?
correct.
Okay. Yep. Out of curiosity, do you have the green banner up? Did they find you that way or did
I don't have it up, but I had been in communication with this person earlier on in my journey. And so he probably suspected, since I hadn't updated my LinkedIn profile, that I was still looking. So
wonderful. Well, good luck. Let us know what happens.
thank you.
You're welcome. Desiree.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. If you guys remember, those who were on last week, I actually had a little bit of um, I had a couple of contract houses who had reached out to me for offers, for one in the city, in New York City, one in Connecticut. The one in the city I was a little concerned about for the second level manager, so I decided to decline that offer.
Good for
But
you.
I thank you. My gut it just wasn't settled. My spidey senses were tingling on that one. So I did accept one after with a organization here in Connecticut, and it's a contract to hire.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. What will you be doing?
Program manager, strategy, implementing strategy.
That's wonderful. Now, where did those recruiters find you?
Actually, they just reached out to me. One of them I had never talked to before, so they reached out to me through LinkedIn.
Good.
One I was already in their system from really years ago, and every so often, one or another of their recruiters would reach out and see if I'm available or whatever. So this particular individual reached out, and I'd never spoken to him before, but it was, I think, because I was in their system from a long time before. So he just randomly reached out. I hadn't really even sort of officially started looking yet. He reached out and he said, "Hey, you want to check into this?" And it wasn't even his forte. It wasn't even like that wasn't even the type of roles that he was typically looking for people for. But he reached out and it just worked out. So blessings, blessings.
Absolutely. So there were a couple things here that are really important. One of which is that her name was already in the system. One of the things that's important to know about applicant tracking systems, and I know they get a bad rap, an applicant tracking system is a database. It is a database of employment-related information, of potential employee information. So whether it's going through a recruiter or an internal company, when you submit an application, when you put your information into their system, it is there. And a good recruiter, whether it's an outside firm or an inside one, will search their database for relevant candidates that they want to reach out to. And a number of people have gotten contacts that way. They've gotten jobs that way. So in spite of the fact that you think that the ATS is going to screen you out, in many cases, as long as it can read your resume and your materials, an ATS is actually a good thing as far as a job seeker is concerned. It is still the human eye that goes through those resumes and decides who I want to talk with. The ATS can be searched to pull out candidates, but it's not going to screen you out. It gives me the sorting to know who to talk to first. Okay, so that's what's really important to know. Okay. Allie.
Good morning, afternoon, everybody. It's not necessarily a win, but I just want to share my experience. I had an interview last week. This was on last Monday. A recruiter sent me email about a position, chief product officer for a startup. On Tuesday, I had a talk with the recruiter. 45 minutes later, he set up a interview with the co-founder of the company for Wednesday. So the reason I want to share is because I want to get some feedback and also maybe can help somebody in the future. I call it was a single issue interview. What I mean by that is they had a bunch of requirements, all checkbox, have you worked with teams overseas? Yes, yes. The only thing they put the whole focus, and I fold, by the way, they were very professional. The interviewer was very professional, did research on me ahead of time, was, have you taken a company from low teens revenue to more than 100 million. I had one case a few years ago, but my last two jobs were mostly smaller startups. And I fold. I could not articulate my capability. But to me was the first time that I call it a single issue interview, that everything else is fine. We are focusing on this. And I fold, I think, even though I send a thank you note and kind of highlighted some of my experiences taking revenues to more than 100 million. And they immediately get back to me and said, thank you, but no, thank you. Again, the good thing was they're very fast to get back to me. The bad thing was, and I learned something new, but the bad thing was I didn't get the job. But again, I wanted to share that. I thought that might be useful to somebody.
It's very useful. Thank you very much for sharing that. So the idea is that even when it doesn't work out, if you learn something, if you can build on something, you get that kind of feedback. It's important for you as you move forward to help you redirect and keep moving in the directions you want to go. Okay. It's last week, I think we talked about the idea of having some of those little notes for yourself, even if it's a reminder just before you leave. If you go through and you know what the hot buttons are, or you think you know what some of those hot buttons are for the job and for the company, remember to have a story in mind so that you can tell it when the situation pops up. It's okay, for example, in that one single issue interview, okay, where you couldn't think about it right away, to start talking, and sometimes that will generate the thought in your mind about another issue. It doesn't matter whether it was the last job or whether it was a job 3 or 4 times ago. As long as you have that experience that you can talk to, you can leverage it to move forward in the new role. In many cases, they don't necessarily want to know when it was, as long as they can hear what you did to make it happen. Okay, so great learning. And the idea is that now you can move forward from that and start to remember what's important for that job. We never know all altogether, right? Wish we had that crystal ball, but we can do as much as we can to try and make it moving. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Any burning questions? All right. Then I want to see whether I can make some of this work. We talked a little bit about here we go. What we're talking about today is that whole idea of making that career pivot. And I know a lot of us are doing it. In fact, I have a poll out on LinkedIn right now, and I'm amazed that over 70%, 80% of the people who've responded have said that they've made at least one pivot in their career. If you haven't voted in that poll yet, I will see whether I can't put the link into either the chat or the private group. But I wanted to see what other things people are doing. Okay. Where is it? So that we can see how we can make some of this work. But if we're talking about, there we go. Talking about career pivots. I'm curious, how many of you have ever had a pivot before? So let me see whether I can't launch it. Try this. Okay. You should be able to see a poll on your screen. There we go. Now, career pivot means that not just you've changed titles in the sense you've gone from an IT analyst to an IT senior analyst to an IT senior manager. Okay. It's actually changing a little bit of the function. And we do that a lot. Or whether you're changing specifically the function within the company or outside the company, whether you're taking different kinds of roles. All of those things work. And okay, that's great. I'm going to give you just another couple of seconds to see whether we can vote. But it looks like, out of curiosity, can you all see the poll on the screen? The responses as they come in?
No.
Not the responses, no.
Okay. I don't know how to share that. All right, but it looks as though at the moment that we've got 62%, 68% of you who said you have made at least one career pivot. Oh, there we go. Let's try that. Now, can you see the results?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I'm just learning new tools. So we'll see what happens with that. So if you've made one career pivot, I'm curious, how many of you have made more than one pivot? In the chat, would you please list, if you're willing, how many career pivots have you made? Different industries absolutely counts as being a career pivot. Okay. So far, I think I'm still leading. Department of Labor says that over the course of their lifetime, people will change career areas. They'll make those career pivots anywhere from 5 to 7 times on average. What that says is that career pivots are not only more common than we think, but that making a career pivot is to some extent easier than we think. So if you've made a successful career pivot, okay, one that was role-based, one that was industry-based, very nice, okay. From teaching to project management, absolutely. Industry and job function, perfect, okay. All of those are definitely career pivots. So if you're thinking about a career pivot now, or thinking about a time that you had a successful career pivot, let's talk about some of those. So if you've had a successful career pivot, what do you think made it important for you to do that? And what helped you to achieve that pivot, to get that role? If you're willing to share.
I can share.
Okay.
I mean, I think honestly, for me, I think it's the person hiring you, because I think if you could do something like marketing or sales, I think if you could do one thing, you can do almost anything. Just you have to learn the industry or the product or the service. And I think if you have somebody hiring you that believes that and isn't like, so stuck on that you have to be from that particular industry and is open to it, then you're in good shape. Otherwise, not.
You're right. Okay. And it's easier sometimes when you're right. The hiring manager, the recruiter, whoever is interviewing you has to be open to that. But it's also up to you to help demonstrate how you fit that new role and why coming in from outside is sometimes an advantage, not a disadvantage.
Agree.
Okay. And I think there are lots of ways to do that. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about. Okay, Michelle, I think you were next.
Let me unmute here. For me, it was the availability of a role and that I had transferable skills. So I had entered the company for a role, and my background was at the time was in point of sale store systems, but a role opened up in e-commerce. So since I had a background in managing and technology as well as, quality role, I did business analyst. I stepped into a business analyst role on the e-commerce side.
Very good. So again, it's that transfer. It's not a complete pivot. You're still in the main area, but you were bringing skills from one area to another, which is fantastic. Okay. Thank you. Ali, you were next.
So very quickly, I was working at a company that my team was dismantled, and I had an option to go to different areas. One, I went interview internally, and I got the job was sales enablement. I was not a product management. As a product manager, I did a lot of sales enablement, but not as a full function. I did it. I enjoyed it. Was fun. But sometimes the challenge I see is that the hiring managers, if you don't have that very specific experience, they're hesitant to hire you. And I see that a lot. And the joke I have is that they want somebody who walks on water. And you say, I walk on water. And they said, yeah, but you walk on salt water. You need somebody who walks on fresh water. So sometimes they get into such a super focus area that unless you have done that thing for the past 10 years, they're not willing to give you the opportunity, even though you can do the job. And it's a mentality that I see. And for whatever reason, some people just hardwired, their brain has been hardwired that I need to get something very specific, the domain knowledge or somebody who's done it is more successful than somebody who might free. By the way, one piece of data, there is a book called Super Founders. I recommend it if you're interested. Actually look at the characteristic of people who build companies and with a valuation over $1 billion. And he found out that 70% of them came from a different segment. So if you started a fintech company, you actually came from edtech. So not being from the same industry sometimes has advantages because you see things from a different angle. But as I said, I've gone through this, it's becoming a religious conversation sometimes, is that some people are so hardwired that unless you're from their industry with that very, very specific experience, they're not willing to give you the opportunity and hire. Again, just sharing.
You're absolutely right. And that is one of the concerns, but it is one of the things that we can try and work around. No guarantees, but I've got some tricks that might help. Okay, Desiree.
Hi, me again. I actually started out, my undergraduate degree was electrical engineering. So I actually started out in engineering, doing product development, did manufacturing engineering, etc. Worked in several industries, was a program manager, actually moving sensors from United States to China to be manufactured in China. Started networking. Some friends introduced me to some folks in insurance, and met someone at a conference, started having a conversation, and he invited me in to have a, they had an interview blitz. And so he invited me to this interview blitz, and I moved into IT project management.
That's wonderful. So how were you able to convince them, Desiree, that this was the right move for them and for you?
Transferable skills. Like I said, I'd already worked in a couple of different industries, and I'd done, like I said, manufacturing engineering, do new product development, design engineering, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of the skills from a quote unquote building things or creating things was pretty much the same thing, whether you're creating a tangible product or an intangible product with software and IT and that sort of thing. So it was literally just having a conversation with someone, and he, as Ali was saying, he was able to see the skill sets that were also transferable, because it also has to have something to do with the person being able to have that vision as well, to be able to see you being able to do that job as well, because you can talk from here to Christmas, but until they're able to see that you can actually do that job, you probably, won't be able to get it. But having that conversation, he was able to see that, and we had we continued with the interview, and I got hired right away.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank
That was a
you.
great thing to do, right? And that whole idea of those transferable skills, trying to get people to see that, that's really important. Thank you. Okay, Carol.
Yeah, my pivot experience, my role pivot was done internally within a company. And I think doing a role pivot is easier to do when you're already in a company. I moved from an L&D role to a communications role. So I had been doing e-learning and I moved into IT communications. So that's how I got into communications. And of course, people knew me, and I was able to kind of make that pivot. The industry pivot I did from healthcare to high tech, and that was by spending some time in a smaller company before I went to high tech. But the smaller company had something similar to the high tech company I went to. So I pivoted by going to a smaller company and then back to a large company.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else want to share how they managed to do a career pivot? Okay. For those of you thinking about career pivots, what's prompting it? Are you looking to stay within your industry, move to a different industry, move to a slightly different part of your field, explore new opportunities that way? I know that several of you on this call are making career pivots. Yes, Al.
Yeah, so I've been out looking for about 1.5 years now, and I've stayed kind of in the education field. And the position that I'm currently on the verge of getting, hopefully, is still in education, but it's where I was doing college recruiting and admissions. Now this is more advancement, which is fundraising. So I think part of it is working with someone to have a champion inside who can talk about your transferable skills. And so I think they saw that, okay, I don't have any skills working with advancement or fundraising, but you have other skills. You've worked in higher education, you've done these other things. So I think sometimes it's a matter of having someone who supports you inside to give you that little boost for you to get that role. Because otherwise, like a lot of people are saying, it's kind of hard to try to tell people, yeah, I can do the work, and they don't, and like Ali's saying, sometimes they're very focused on someone who's already done the job when they could bring somebody else who's got these other skills that might even make it better. So I'm looking at this position as an opportunity for me to pivot to use the skills I already have and hopefully be successful at that.
That's fantastic. And yeah, we're looking forward to hearing the next step in that journey.
Almost there.
I know it's been a long haul. It's tough sometimes. But the idea of being able to showcase those transferable skills, lots of people, believe it or not, we sometimes screen ourselves out more than screen in. Don't screen yourself out. If you've got some of those transferable skills, and we'll talk about how many you need, my feeling is if you match 65 to 70% of what they're looking for, and we can talk about it in their terminology, it's a good job to apply for, whether it's a career pivot or in your same industry or same area. Bo.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bo Smith here in suburban Chicago. And some of you know that my background's in the newspaper business. I love it. I'm passionate about it, but it's also a challenged industry, unfortunately. So most recently, I've been in sales training and leadership training. Wonderful company. But some of you know I'm a prostate cancer survivor. And so I'm blessed to be in remission and have my health and just feel there's something out there that I can do to help people more. So maybe it's getting into a nonprofit field, helping them to grow their visibility and grow their revenue. Perhaps it's working still with a good company I can believe in. Or the other pivot I'm seriously considering is a couple of people have suggested I become a networking coach and connection coach, which a little scary to start my own business. I've never done that, but my good health and my desire to help others is leading me in hopefully a more helpful direction.
That's great. I mean, congratulations on the survivorship. I think that's fantastic. But the idea of thinking about different ways that you can use your skill set, I think is really important and very useful, not only for you, but for us. And by the way, Bo really is a networking pro. His skill set is going out there and making those connections with people. So if you want some ideas and tips, hit him up. Sorry, Bo.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see. I think you were next.
Hi there. So I'm living a career pivot right now. I've been a special education teacher and case manager and transitioning for the same reasons that all the other teachers are out there, pay and working conditions. And because I love the case management and legal documentation part of my job, I've earned an associate project manager certificate. So that's the sort of work I'm looking for, entry level. But the other teachers that I've seen leave successfully, many of them had job offers from friends before they went. And in this economy, I'm finding it tremendously difficult to break into the corporate world. And so I've worked with a teacher transition coach, currently working with Linda, which is so helpful. And coming here, and educators typically don't use LinkedIn. So those of us who are leaving education are kind of starting from zero in the connections department. So it's, that's been challenging. And I feel like when I get a foot in the door anywhere and get a first position, I'll do fine. But getting that position is proving to be rough.
It is, unfortunately. But it's worth it.
I love coming here every week. It's a big pep talk for me.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And thank you. Okay, Michelle, you're next.
Hi, everyone. So for me, it's changing industries. So I still want to pursue digital engineering leadership, but I've done retail my entire career. So I'd still do retail, that's how passionate I am about it. But I'm ready for change. I'm desiring to go into the travel industry as one aspect. The other pivot, which is more strategy for me, is if I do pivot into travel industry, but coming out of technology and going into product management, which will be a stepping stone for me because I may have to go low and then come high again. But I'd rather be in a position and seek any additional training or education that I may need, and then do that pivot.
And that makes some sense. And the idea is that, yes, sometimes if you're trying to make a career pivot, a major one, you may need some additional training and support. And you may also, as much as we hate to do it, you may have to take that step back, or actually, I'm calling it a step to the side. I don't believe in straight line career paths. And so as a result, sometimes those career paths will pivot. And part of that may be that in the next role, at least for short term, you may need to take a step back in terms of salary in order to gain that extra skills and experience. Right. But our careers are long term. We have lots of different opportunities, not only to grow in terms of titles, skills, whatever, but also in terms of salary over time. So this isn't the forever step back. It is a different way of looking at things and trying to move in that different directions. And sometimes that takes changes and different changes, not just on the hiring manager's part, it takes it on our part too, being willing to accept that. So good. And Michelle, if you're really interested in travel industry, I have a couple people you might talk with.
Okay, great. Thank you. Would love to connect.
Okay, so let me know, DM me, because otherwise I will forget. Okay, Annette.
My name is Annette Lacey. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist.
Annette, I'm sorry.
I don't know that I would call this a pivot, but I had a subspecialty in the human animal bond, which means people and their pets. And so I worked with people and their animals, the veterinary industry, veterinarians who were experiencing compassion fatigue and burnout for a time. And then I took a role at a different agency as the Animal Assisted Interventions Program Coordinator. Then COVID happened and rules around having animals in the agency because they are a vector for germs changed, and a number of other things changed. I had to take a leave of absence for a health matter. And I am looking to pivot to something where I feel I can use more creativity. I feel like that's been somewhat lacking in my job in a traditional sense. When I studied my doctorate, I studied psychology and the arts. And so one thing that I have done is gone back to school at the community college and learned how to use computer programs to invent different kinds of products. So I invented a board game, which I'm very proud of and happy about. I'm looking to continue something in that arena. I think one thing huge thing that is in my way is that I don't have I haven't clarified or have the level of specificity I think I would like to have in doing a greater pivot or career search. So I am brainstorming, I'm trying new things, and I haven't landed on that thing that I want to pursue, just kind of with a very focused approach. So I think that is my biggest challenge right now.
I think that's a challenge for all of us, Annette.
Oh, I'm sorry, Linda, I couldn't hear. One moment, please. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. I said, I think that's a challenge for all of us, is trying to determine what it is we really want to do.
Yeah.
Okay. But the idea that you understand that and that you're beginning that exploration, I think is really great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so let's talk more about those career pivots. You all raised a number of really interesting points, and one of which is that it's hard to determine what you want to do next. It's one of the joys, actually, of this job market, and I will tell you there aren't many, but one of the joys is that you can explore so many different options. Now, your resume, because you're changing it every time, you're going to be focusing in on the skills, the transferable skills for that new job. Your LinkedIn profile, on the other hand, has to be generic. And for those of you who are moving more in the career pivot area, one of the challenges for you is going to be, how do you genericize your LinkedIn profile enough to be able to focus in on the jobs you're really looking at now? So we all know that in terms of your LinkedIn profile, there are several areas that you can work on to help you stand out as part of that career pivot. One of which is that you're going to be making sure that in that skills section of your profile, where you can now have up to 100 skills, you don't need them all, but you can have up to 100, you're going to be using not only the LinkedIn drop-down boxes to find what those skills should be, but you're also going to be making sure that you are adding those new areas and move those new areas to the top of that LinkedIn skills section. In terms of the LinkedIn algorithm, as long as you have at least one endorsement for those skills, you will be found in a search, or at least you could be found in a search. And the more endorsements you have, obviously, the more likely you are to be found for that skill set. But what's important is that when I look at your profile, even though you've got 100 skills, the algorithm can see them all. I'm only going to see 2. Unless I click see all. And even if I click see all, I will probably only look at the first screen, which means the first 10 skills. So make sure that every time you add a skill or every time you get an endorsement, you go back in and you reorder those skills so the ones you most want to be found for show up at the top of your profile. It's also important to go ahead and every time you add a skill to make sure that you are asking some of your first level connections, because they're the only ones who can endorse you. Ask some of those first level connections to endorse you for those skills. Now, our private group is a great way to do that. But please, guys, don't ask for more than 5 endorsements. And the only reason that I'm saying that is, number one, it's an imposition for the person you're asking, even though all you have to do is a click. But we don't know how the LinkedIn algorithms in the back end actually views that. So LinkedIn gods, if you're listening, I don't know, but if you're going through and somebody has 100 skills and you're clicking yes to all of them, LinkedIn may discount all of those for you. So we want to make sure that your endorsement really counts. So, and just as a matter of being polite, ask for no more than 5 or 6. Okay. Michelle.
Hey, Linda, I got a question for you about the skills.
Yep.
I was wondering if you can tell me if there is a way to order them by number of endorsements. Is there a way to sort it?
So yes, you can. In fact, LinkedIn, its default is highest number of endorsements first.
Oh, okay.
However, every time you add a new skill or you get a new endorsement, it will resort it so the newest ones will show up at the top, whether you like it or not.
How do you, sorry, but then how do you reorder it if it's going to continually resort it for you?
So you can go in and reorder it anytime. So when you go into, let me see if I can show you real quick. I'm going to share my screen with you and show you where to do that. In just a minute.
Yeah. I mean, I know that you can reorder them manually, drag them up and down. You go to the skills section, you click on the ellipsis, and then you click on reorder, and then you manually order it up and down. But what I'm asking is, it doesn't stay that way, is from what you're saying.
No, there's no way that I know of to make that a permanent share. or a permanent fixture.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that you necessarily want to.
Well, as you were saying, for a particular job that you're going for right now, you may want to have those skills at the top, but the fact is that they
That's
might
true.
not stay there.
But not only that, Michelle, you can apply for a job today or be focusing on this job. You don't know when somebody's going to look at your profile. So trying to change it just for a specific job is almost a lesson in futility.
I meant a genre of jobs. So for example, I'm going right now, senior business analyst, right? So
Okay.
I want to put, right now I have cross-functional team leadership, communications, business systems analysis, BRD, that kind of stuff at the top. But I might want to bring something else up to the top.
So you have to change that every time, okay? And you can do that. And I'm going to show you for those who don't know. Okay, you go into Me, View Profile. Go down to the skills. You want to double check and make sure that use the plus first. Okay, this is where you can add skills. But then go into edit, which is the pencil, always your edit tool. Your three dots. And the very first thing I want you to do is make sure that all of your endorsement settings are on. You can only be endorsed by a first level contact, but you want to make sure that you can not only be endorsed, but endorse other people. And this is the way of telling LinkedIn that you got that going. And then up here is the reorder. And reorder is a drag and drop. You go to the right, hold your cursor down, and move it up and down as you go. Now, one of the things I'd like you to do when you're thinking about those skills is think about those skills as Boolean search terms. Do you all know what a Boolean search is? Where you can add this, or this, not this. If I'm doing a search for somebody to fill a particular role, I'm going to be using as my initial search terms those things that are most likely to be used in that job that's going to narrow down my field. Yes, communication is an important thing. Yes, cross-functional work is an important thing. But that's not going to necessarily separate Lisa from Annette, from Dan, from Cyrus. It's going to give me so many search people showing up in that search that I'm going to have to use another term to narrow it down. So the ones you want at the top of that profile would be the ones that are most likely to be used in that job that are going to separate you from other candidates. So if you're making a career pivot into project management, you are business analysis, you want your very first skill on that section to be business analysis. Or something specifically related to that.
Yeah, that's not really a career pivot for me, but I can put that at the top, but that's actually what it says is my last job was business analyst, so.
Right, I understand. So I'm using that one as an example, and I apologize, but the idea is whatever you're looking for, whether it's a career pivot or whether you're staying in your lane, the top 10 skills on that list should be those that will help to really, if I'm doing a search for somebody to do that job, what skills would I put into my search bar? And as somebody who has done a lot of those searches, I'm not putting in communication. It doesn't help me narrow the field. Will I be
great feedback, thanks.
Okay, will I be looking for it in your profile? Probably. Will LinkedIn find it? Absolutely. But if I'm doing a search, I have a limited number of terms that I can put in. Think about it as doing a Google search for anything. The more specific you can get in your search terms, the more likely you are to not only narrow your results, but to come up with results that really work for you. The LinkedIn search algorithms are exactly the same. So make sure that the ones that you're putting at the top of your profile are the ones you most want to be found for. And as you're adding new skills, make sure that they're the ones that are really used in a variety of those jobs. So here's the way you do that. You all know that as you're looking at jobs, you're pulling out some of those relevant keywords and terms. And LinkedIn, if you're looking at them online, will sometimes tell you some of the relevant terms. But LinkedIn is also going to tell you things like communication and team and time management. Honestly, I don't care about those. Recruiters don't care about those as part of their initial search. But look at the things that are important for the rest of the job. And if you're finding, for example, here's that 60 to 70% match again, right? Make yourself a spreadsheet, make a list. If 10 of the jobs you're looking for are all looking for the same skill, that same term, make sure that it shows up on your resume, make sure that it, or someplace, but at least make sure that it shows up in your LinkedIn profile in that skills section. Because that's a term that I am more likely to use in order to narrow my field of candidates when I'm looking at profiles. It's an easy way to do things. It helps you to really narrow your field. And especially when you're making that career pivot or when you're doing any kind of a job search, you want to be found for the things you most want to do. Which also means that one of the things you want to do is that you want to, just the same way that you can add new skills, you can delete some. Just because you have 100 spaces to use doesn't mean you should. If there's something that you used to do that you can be very skilled at, but you don't want to do it anymore, take it out of that skills section. There's no reason for you to be found for something you don't want to do. So think about that when you're looking at that skills. It's not just adding new and reordering. It's what do you still want to do? This is one of your ways of showcasing yourself, not only what you can do, but what you want to do, to recruiters, to hiring managers, to networking connections. So take advantage of it. And too many people don't. They think about it as just, again, it's that history. When you're in job search, take advantage of every tool that's available, and that skills section is definitely one. Now, if you're trying to make that kind of a career pivot, you know that experience section, that can be dull and boring. We know that. And you can't do a whole lot in that skills, in that experience section to talk about in terms of titles, what you've done if it doesn't really match the new job. You still want to be able to talk about it. But again, your LinkedIn profile and your resume need to complement one another. They don't need to be exactly the same. The titles do, the dates do, the companies do. But you can add different information. So in your LinkedIn profile, because it has to be generic, talk about some of those activities, those actions, those results that match the jobs that you want to be doing. May not be an exact match, but try and use appropriate language to phrase it in ways that make sense. So if you were doing something and you're moving into a project, or want to move into a project management role, talk about it as managing the process. That's project management. Developing and implementing and managing the team to do. It's project management. So we're using different phrases to try and highlight what you can do for those new roles. By the same token, whether you're in trying to make that career pivot or whether you're trying to move into another job in your own area, your headline becomes extremely important on LinkedIn. Your headline should not be the title of the job you used to have. Don't advertise the old company, advertise you. Put in several of those job titles that you are looking at, or those skills that you are most wanting to use in that new role. In your About section, here's where you get up to 2,600 characters, free form, to introduce you. You can talk about your career journey. You can talk about the thread that runs throughout your career and why you're excited to make this move into. it gives you the opportunity to stand out as you. It gives you a chance to really talk about not only your why, but your what. What are you really good at? What are you going to bring to everybody else? And why are you making this pivot to move from one industry, one job area to another? Now, if you're staying in your lane in terms of what the job is and just moving industry to industry, and you've got several different industries in your sites, it's hard to really target an industry specifically in that about section, but you can still talk about it in very transferable terms and talk about how you love whatever industry you're going into, the fact that you can bring this specific skill set and the experiences from best practices to help the company grow. In fact, one of the things that Ali was saying earlier was that companies really want you to have the ability to walk on fresh water as opposed to salt, right? That was his analogy. And companies, we know some of them are still looking for unicorns. Your goal when you are doing these interviews, when you're putting your resume together and that cover letter, and especially your interview stories, is to demonstrate that the skills you have are universal. That you bring experience, the best practices from one industry into theirs. Talk about not being able to walk on fresh water as a positive, not a negative. Okay, so instead of saying, no, I can't walk on fresh water, you're right. But here's why that's an advantage. Because I know how to walk on salt water. I know how to walk on brackish water as well as dry land. And I know how to keep you out of the mud. Because what I do is I bring this and I walk in without the experience, without the preconceived notions of what it means to do this here. So I have those fresh eyes. I'm going to bring you the best of both worlds. The ability to look at things from new perspectives, but based on a solid foundation of experience and success doing X, Y, and Z. Not X, Y, and Z in other companies, not X, Y, and Z in other industries, but just X, Y, and Z. When you do that, you give somebody a different perspective and a different way of looking at things. And the more you do that throughout that interview process, the more likely they are to be willing to take that chance and to bring you in to make that kind of a career industry pivot. It is a very successful approach, maybe not the first time, and it's something you may have to get comfortable with. But that, do you have that specific experience? No, but it's not no and let it go. No, I can learn it. They don't want to let you learn on their dime. They want to see how you bring it in. Okay, do you have that specific experience? You're right. But here's why that's an example, why that's an advantage. Because here's what I bring that nobody who's been doing this forever can bring. If you've ever been a hiring manager, think about that idea of new perspectives. You want to bring in somebody with a different point of view who could, instead of the been there, done that, this won't work, we've tried it before, being able to look at things from the perspective of, gee, let's give it a try. Maybe we've tried this before and this is a different way of putting it into practice. So the same way that you're trying to use your skills differently, you have to be the one to convince the person on the other side of the desk or the screen that it is to their advantage, okay, to let you make that happen. All the things that you bring and how you bring them together. Okay. Does that, okay, I know we didn't get, excuse me, complete to all of that, but do you understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about making those yes ands? Has anybody tried it that kind of an approach?
Just wanted to thank you for answering the question very thoroughly. And I think it's really great advice. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And sometimes I have a tendency to ramble too. So sorry about that, guys. Okay.
I appreciate it.
Of course. All right. So all of your information should be in the chat. Mine is as well. Make sure that you're connecting with each other. Make sure that you are connecting with everybody in the group and in our private group as well. I'm going to try